Welcome back to Investing Talk podcast. Today, we're tackling a question many of you have asked. Is KULR Technology Group a good time to buy right now? We've pulled together a comprehensive analysis looking at, everything from their financials to recent news, future prospects. It's all based on the sources provided, specifically as of mid-July 2025. And before we jump in, if you find this kind of analysis helpful, please do remember to subscribe, like, and maybe leave a comment. It really helps us out. And hey, if you'd like to support the show, you could consider buying us a coffee. Also, if there's a specific company you want us to look into, just drop it in the comments below. Let us know.
It's always a fascinating challenge, isn't it? Taking a company like KULR, they operate in these dynamic, sometimes really volatile sectors, and then trying to break down what truly matters for an investor. What's interesting here is just how diverse the info is. You've got technical charts, financials, long-term strategy.
Absolutely. So let's unpack this and see if KULR Technology Group fits your investment strategy. Okay, let's start with the basics, their financial health. What do the numbers tell us about KULR's revenue and profitability?
Right. So in Q1 2025, KULR reported a pretty substantial 40% revenue increase, reached $2.45 million. So that's, solid top-line growth.
Okay, 40% is significant.
It is. However, this was coupled with a net loss of $18.8 million.
Oof, $18.8 million loss.
Yeah, and largely attributed to their Bitcoin mining segment. So this points pretty clearly to ongoing profitability challenges, which, it's a key flag for any investor.
That's a really significant loss despite the revenue growth. What about their cash situation or debt levels? Did the sources touch on that?
The sources didn't give us direct data on cash flow trends or specific debt numbers. But that large net loss does suggest, a potential cash burn concern. You'd really need more detailed financial statements for a clear picture of their liquidity.
Okay. So looking ahead then, are analysts optimistic? Do they see earnings improving?
They do predict some improvement, yeah. They forecast EPS, earnings per share, to narrow from about negative 56 cents to around negative 16 cents in the next quarter, and revenues potentially rising to maybe $3.50 million. Yeah. So it suggests a projected kind of gradual path towards narrowing those losses, but still losses nonetheless.
Right. Still in the red, but moving maybe in the right direction. So they're in thermal management, sustainable energy, but also this big push into Bitcoin mining. How does that industry positioning play into their competitive advantage or maybe disadvantage?
Well, KULR positions itself broadly, right? Provider of thermal management, sustainable energy solutions. And they've diversified strategically into AI-driven energy tech and obviously Bitcoin mining. Their core thermal technology could be a real competitive advantage, in the sectors needing advanced energy management. However, that reliance on the very volatile Bitcoin sector adds a significant layer of risk to their whole profile. It really raises that question. How much does that diversification help versus hinder them? Is it a smart bet or spreading themselves too thin?
Yeah, a critical question. Okay, with those fundamentals in mind, let's talk valuation. Are there typical price multiples available, like PE, PS?
Well, because KULR is currently unprofitable, negative EPS, standard PE ratios just aren't relevant here. And the sources didn't provide specific current price to sales or price to book ratios either. So that can make traditional valuation pretty challenging.
That makes sense. No earnings, no PE. But what about analyst price targets? Is there any kind of consensus view there?
This is where it gets really wide-ranging. It's fascinating, actually. The 12-month average price target is around $40.
$40. Wow. Okay, compared to the current price around $6.15, that's huge potential upside, over 550%.
Exactly. Massive implied upside. But then you look closer, and some analysts have a 2025 price target closer to $4.75.
Wait, $4.75? That's actually below where it is now.
Precisely. So this huge divergence, it just screams high uncertainty in its valuation. Analysts are clearly seeing very different futures here.
That's a massive gap, what usually drives that kind of extreme disagreement. And discounted cash flow models, anything there?
Typically, you see this with companies in highly speculative, fast-moving sectors. Think emerging tech, biotech, or, crypto exposure like here. Profitability isn't there yet, so analysts are basically making very different bets on future success, future breakthroughs, and no DCF model was provided in the results. Honestly, given the ongoing losses and uncertain cash flows, trying to apply traditional valuation models with any real confidence would be pretty difficult right now.
Okay, let's switch gears then. Let's look at the technicals. How has KULR's price actually been behaving recently on the charts?
Well, the current price, around $6.15, it is above both the 50-day simple moving average, which is at $2.77, and the 200-day SMA at $1.73. So that does suggest a pretty strong rebound from its past lows, some positive momentum building.
Okay, so it's bounced back significantly from lows. What about its short-term trends, support, resistance levels?
Well, despite experiencing, really extreme volatility, it had a 74.9% decline in the first half of 2025.
Wow.
Yeah. But the short-term trend does show some recovery attempts now. The Relative Strength Index, the RSI, it's around 41, which is generally considered neutral, maybe slightly oversold territory.
Yeah.
So there's no immediate, overbought pressure suggesting a big pullback is imminent based on that.
Okay, but that high volatility you mentioned sounds like a really key characteristic here.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking very high annualized volatility, around 68%.
68%.
Yep, and that directly implies, significant price swings are likely. There's inherent trading risk baked in.
Got it. Any other key indicators mentioned, MCD or anything like that?
No, ManCD and other specific technical indicators weren't explicitly reported in the sources we had, but you can bet they'd reflect this high volatility and the sort of mixed momentum picture we're seeing.
Okay, now here's where it seems to get really interesting based on the sources. What's the latest news on QLR, especially around this Bitcoin mining operation?
Right, this is a big part of their story now. KULR has notably increased its Bitcoin holdings. They're up to 1,021 BTC, and they're reporting a significant 291.2% Bitcoin yield.
291% yield. How does that even work?
Well, the specifics of that calculation weren't detailed, but it's a huge number they're putting out there. And they're heavily expanding their mining capabilities, too. They're aiming for 1.25 EHs, that's exahash per second, a measure of mining power by late summer 2025. So a major ramp up.
That is a huge move into Bitcoin. How are analysts reacting to this specific strategy?
Well, the consensus among the admittedly small group of analysts covering it, looks like about 2 of them, is actually a strong buy. And their price targets are, like we said, significantly higher than current levels. So it suggests they have confidence in this strategic direction, despite the risks.
Interesting. And what about the broader market sentiment? Is there fear? Greed? Where does QLR fit in?
The overall Fear and Greed Index is at 39, which indicates fear in the general market. For KULR specifically, sentiment seems to be neutral. It suggests, cautious views overall, maybe reflecting that balance between potential undervaluation and those ongoing risk concerns.
Right. And is there any kind of meme stock buzz? Anything like we saw back in 2024 with other names?
No. The sources indicate there's no significant positive social media buzz or that kind of meme stock momentum right now. The focus really seems to be more on their fundamentals, such as they are, and these strategic pivots, especially Bitcoin, rather than just speculative hype.
Okay. So looking forward, what are the key events, the catalysts that could really move KULR's stock in the short term?
In the short term, it really seems to hinge on those upcoming Bitcoin mining operational milestones. First, achieving 750 PHs petahash per second, and then hitting that bigger target of 1.25 EHs. Delivering on those could significantly boost revenues, you'd think, and hopefully investor confidence along with it.
And for investors with a longer time frame, what are the potential drivers there?
Longer term, yeah, you'd be looking for continued growth in their original thermal management solutions. That's still their core tech. Also, the successful deployment of their AI-driven energy technology, and of course, just the broader dynamics of the Bitcoin market itself will be huge for them now.
And naturally, the earnings reports will be absolutely critical moments, right?
Absolutely. The next earnings releases are going to be vital.
Okay.
Investors need to see if that revenue growth, especially from Bitcoin, is actually translating into better margins, into reducing those big net losses we talked about earlier. That's the proof point.
Definitely. Okay, we've talked potential. Let's talk the flip side, the risks. What are the big stock-specific risks for KULR?
I'd say the primary ones are those heavy net losses we keep mentioning, and the now substantial reliance on the extremely volatile Bitcoin market. That combination exposes them to significant profitability risk and operational risk. If Bitcoin tanks or mining gets harder, that hits them hard.
And what about the broader sectors? Energy tech, crypto, they have their own risks, don't they?
They certainly do. Both sectors face challenges like regulatory uncertainties. Governments could crack down on crypto or change energy policies. There's always the threat of technological disruption, someone coming up with a better battery or a more efficient mining method, and just rapid swings in market sentiment.
Makes sense. And wider macroeconomic factors, interest rates, energy prices.
Yep, those play a role too. The interest rate environment impacts funding costs and investor appetite for speculative stocks like this one. And volatility in energy markets affects their costs, potentially their clients, and of course, Bitcoin valuations often correlate with broader risk appetite.
And finally, let's just circle back one more time to that volatility figure.
Right, that 68% annualized volatility, it's high. And combined with the recent steep price drops, it signifies pretty notable trading risk. Plus, for a smaller market cap company, even one with speculative interest, liquidity can sometimes dry up outside of peak trading hours. That's something traders need to keep in mind. Getting in and out smoothly isn't always guaranteed.
Okay, so pulling this all together, what does this picture mean for KULR Technology Group? How would you sum it up for someone trying to decide if now's the time to buy?
Well, if we look at the big picture, sort of scoring them, KLR comes out maybe a 5 out of 10.
Hmm.
It shows, promising revenue growth and strategic positioning in these emerging, potentially high-growth tech fields, thermal management, AI, energy, Bitcoin. However, it's significantly held back by those heavy losses, the really speculative Bitcoin exposure, and that very high volatility. So while some analyst targets suggest really significant upside potential, the execution risk is just very high. It boils down to this.
Yeah.
It's suitable mainly for investors with a high tolerance for risk, a
Yeah.
very high tolerance.
Okay, a 5 out of 10, high risk. So for those specific investors, the risk-tolerant ones, do the sources suggest any particular price range as a potential entry point?
The sources seem to suggest an entry price around the current levels, so approximately $6. But ideally, given the volatility, maybe consider buying on dips, perhaps towards the low $5 to $6 range. It's probably advisable to avoid chasing the price if it spikes up, especially above recent highs, unless there's clear confirmation of, sustained profitability improvements.
And what about investment horizons? Any advice for short-term traders versus long-term investors? Stop losses, take profits.
Yeah, for short-term traders, that volatility and the news catalysts like the mining updates, they definitely offer opportunities. But you have to be ready for sharp swings. Setting tight stop losses is crucial, maybe 10–15% below your entry. So if you buy near $6, maybe a stop around $5.10, for example. For take profit targets, maybe aim for 20–30% gains based on those catalysts hitting, or technical resistance levels, perhaps in the $7 to $7.80 range. But you need to adjust based on market conditions.
Okay. And for the long term?
For long-term investors, patience is probably key. They might want to wait for clear signals of profitability, successful integration of this big Bitcoin strategy, or maybe major commercial wins for their core thermal technology, waiting for more proof points.
That's incredibly helpful context, laying out strategies for different approaches. So the conclusion seems to be KULR Technology Group is definitely a speculative, high-risk, high-potential reward stock, but it comes loaded with caveats.
Exactly. And this really raises an important question for you, the listener. How do you personally balance that allure of potentially high returns, in these exciting but volatile sectors like crypto and advanced energy tech? How do you balance that with the very real financial risks, the ongoing losses, the market swings? It's a good reminder that even the most promising technology needs solid execution to actually turn into profitable growth. It's not just about the idea.
Food for thought indeed. Well, thank you for joining us for this analysis of KULR Technology Group. We hope this has given you a clearer picture for your own investment considerations. We'll be back soon with another look at the markets.